Ron DeSantis goes on Face the Nation, and he's just, politician number, insert whatever number, politician number 4087, who was pushing unhinged talking points about the massacre that's happening between Palestinians or Palestine and Israel. So let's listen. This is Face the Nation, Ron DeSantis talking on this.
We go now to Florida Governor and Republican presidential candidate Ron DeSantis, and he joins us from Tallahassee. Good morning to you, Governor.
Good morning.
You're running to be the next commander-in-chief, so I want to focus on some of the crises we're seeing right now. You were once a Navy JAG, which means you advised on the law of armed conflict. With Israel about to launch this invasion of Gaza, I wonder...
So let's make sure we understand what's happening here on screen. I guess she feels she's getting advice from a military expert. That's the way she's presented it. You were a military JAG giving advice, so she's going to ask for his advice. Now, what is his background in? I know it's involved with Guantanamo Bay. So the guy who was involved with torture, that guy we want advice from on Israel. It's like when they bring John Bolton on and ask him for his advice. Or when they bring on Nikki Haley, for that matter, because she's unhinged warmonger herself. But let's listen to what he says to this question.
Wonder what you would advise them in terms of distinguishing between legitimate targets and civilians.
Well, one, Israel has a right to defend itself to the hilt, and that means the complete elimination of Hamas, the eradication of their terrorist infrastructure. Israel has put out warnings to civilians about where...
Not sure why this is stopping and starting, but
Israel is going to conduct operations and has told civilians there to leave the area. Hamas is telling those civilians to stay in the area. So they're using the civilians as human shields. So, of course, when you're in war, you want to avoid that. But if there are civilian casualties, that's the fault of Hamas. That's not going to be the fault of Israel.
So,
but would you advise...
So Ron DeSantis, one, doesn't even ask the question. Understand the mindset. She's saying, how do you determine, what's your advice on determining who's are real innocent people? And he said, I ain't really concerned with that shit. If there's any casualties of wars on the Palestinian side, that's the fault of Hamas. Ask them when that's not the question. Why, if you are on the side of just, or if you are on the just side, why are so many of you on this supposed Israeli just side? Why are you finding it hard to address questions like this? So let's see, because she's going to double back. Let's see if he eventually answers it.
For example, the Israeli military to avoid attacking infrastructure to provide water and electricity as they have done.
Well, Margaret, the Hamas is holding people hostage.
That's an easy question. Yes, I would advise them not to commit war crimes. Yes, that's easy. I'm going to go back 15 seconds and let him answer.
It's not going to be the fault of Israel.
But would you advise, for example, the Israeli military to avoid attacking infrastructure to provide water and electricity as they have done?
Well, Margaret, the Hamas is holding people hostage still. You have Israelis being held hostage as well as Americans being held hostage.
I understand.
I don't think they're under, but I don't think they're under an obligation to be providing water and these utilities while those hostages are being held. Hamas.
There is no obligation to provide water to Palestinians who are not involved in this conflict because supposedly there's allegedly a Hamas person around somewhere. But the same thing is such a... These events is so exposing the U.S. empire because this very thing y'all was just reporting how Russia does this to Ukraine and this is terrible war crimes. Y'all was just talking about that. And then, side note, you notice I haven't heard Ukraine in days. I haven't heard the talk of what's happening in Ukraine in days. Found a new war, a new pretty young war to jump on.
Should return those hostages before any discussions are had. And it's a disgrace what they're doing. And Israel has every right to use all the pressure that they can to get those people back.
There are 2.3 million people living in Gaza.
Refuses to answer the question.
You support?
It's not collective punishment. Hamas is the one that is creating this predicament. Hamas is the one who always uses civilian targets to conduct operations. And we dealt with this some in Iraq, where Al-Qaeda in Iraq would commandeer mosques. So under normal circumstances, of course, you don't target a religious.
They commandeer mosques. So that's the reason. You see how this is the reason why all the time. Why you kill the babies over there in the school? They commandeered the school. Why did you blow up the UN peace UN peacemakers? The Hamas people's around the corner. Yet there is a certain segment of people who are believing it simply because they don't know otherwise. And that's what this type of propaganda depends on. You not knowing all of the story. So you just have to go, I have to depend on these people. They saying this is what happened. I don't know any part of this story.
Religious institution. But if you have terrorist groups that are converting that in to a base of operations, then you absolutely treat that as military targets.
Anything. He will not address
those decisions to
being fair to the Palestinians. He will not even go down that path.
Purposes.
Is there any caution you would give to the Israeli military?
That's what you're saying. Like, you ain't gonna give them no advice about nothing, huh? And she's usually the crazy warmonger person pushing her guests to be more. But she doesn't have to do it with this guy.
Would you ask, for example, the prime minister to hold off until the 500 to 600 Americans who are trapped in Gaza manage to get out?
Well, look, I think that's something in terms of those that, of course, you would have discussions with. We would be willing to do, if I was president, apply resources to be able to help any American who is either being captured or in harm's way. I would note, I, as governor of Florida, have actually launched flights to bring Americans home from the war zone now. We're going to have the first flights landing in Florida today. We're going to bring hundreds of people back from Israel to the state of Florida, and they've had trouble dealing with the federal government. So, of course, that's an important thing that you want to consider. Right.
But there are 500 to 600 Americans stuck in Gaza specifically. And let me ask you a little bit more about that. Because
you notice she has been asking persistent questions, trying to get Ron DeSantis to show some level of fairness, some level of humanity. And he's saying, fuck that shit. This is like 3 or 4 different questions she's asked about different things, but just asking about showing some level of fairness and compassion towards the Palestinians. It's like, fuck that shit. Blame Hamas. The thinking of Western chauvinists.
The 2 million people who live in Gaza, half of them are under the age of 18. Let's take a listen to something you said yesterday.
Half of them are not adults. And you're indiscriminately going in, mowing the lawn, as they say. Oh, I didn't hit the play button. There we go.
Accept people from Gaza into this country as refugees. I am not going to do that. If you look at how they behave, not all of them are Hamas, but they are all anti-Semitic.
I'm sure you know all Arabs are Semites, but
I'm sure you know all Arabs are Semites. At least she corrects him. Now, in another segment, Ron DeSantis is caught saying this, or no, different, not this stream, another stream. He's caught saying something similar like this, even after he's been corrected here. So why would a person who knows that these said people are Semitic, why would they keep using the term, calling them anti-Semitic? Unless it's intentional, like I said earlier, for people who don't know what being anti-Semitic is, or who don't know that Palestinians are also Semitic. You see how propaganda depends on you not knowing the full story.
How can you paint with such a broad brush to say 2.3 million people are anti-Semitic?
Well, first of all, my position is very clear. Those Gaza refugees, Palestinian Arabs, should go to Arab countries. The U.S. should not be absorbing any of those. I think the culture. So they elected Hamas. Let's just be clear about that. Not everyone's a member.
Right. They elected Hamas.
So
you guys have a problem with a duly democratically elected representation. What happened? I thought you guys are doing these conflicts or supporting these conflicts because of democracy.
Probably aren't, but they did elect Hamas.
In 2006, and then the military occupation happened after that, where they went in and haven't allowed elections since 2007. So in 2006, there was an election.
But there was a lot of celebrating of those attacks in the Gaza Strip.
She's trying to say, hey, turn down your unhinged nature on it. Can we turn it down? He's like, no, nigga, fuck that shit. You ain't getting me to turn this shit down. I don't care how insane I sound. They're trying to out her.
This has been an issue for a long time.
Him and Nikki Haley is trying to unhinged warmonger each other, especially on Israel and China.
They teach
Palestine and
kids
China
to hate Jews. The textbooks do not have Israel even on the map. They prepare very young kids to commit terrorist.
The textbooks don't even have Israel on the map. That's because Israel is not a country. It's Palestine.
So I think it's a toxic culture. And I think if we were to import large numbers of those to the United States, I think it would increase anti-Semitism in this country. And I think it would
even though
anti-Americanism.
He just said they're Semites. You see how he's just going to keep saying that? She just told you that they're Semites. But bringing them here, having them be refugees here, increases anti-Semitism. They say, hey, I have been giving my talking points and I'm sticking with them.